You came here for authority. You came here for miracles, wonders, and power. I don't believe that you are gathering here just to waste time and just to do some social stuff. I believe that you look seeking and looking for something special from God. There's a dilemma that happens every time we approach God. And there is three usual and common questions that we can perceive. The first one is the what. What? Whenever we approach God, we say, what, Lord? What do you want from me? What can you do for me, Lord? I'm looking for the what, because the what is probably the first question and interrogation that we are struggling. The what? What do I have to do in purpose and in order to reach out what I need, what I want? The what. The second question is the why. Why? Whenever God is revealing you and calling you to do something, and then immediately we say, why? Why do I have to pass through this? Why God is allowing me this, this happening to my life? Or why? And finally, the when. When there is acceptance and we finally say, yes, Lord, we are just waiting on in this question, this final one, when, Lord? When this is going to take place? When this is going to happen? I want to speak to someone in this place that it's been for a while wondering any of those three questions: the what, the why, or the when. There's anybody here that is being struggling with this in their mind, in your mind, asking yourself what, why, and when?